Britain's King Charles may have expressed his deepest regret for colonial-era abuses in Kenya, but for some, it's not enough.
I never thought I would live to see this day. The West being more scared and spooked by the events that happened within a year, this year. So, the events that took place in West Africa, where there have been more than 4, 5 coups to remove or kick out the French interest in the former French colonies in West Africa and Central Africa. So the West is scared, and that's why they are sending their kings and their head of states to Africa, to their former colonies, former British and former German colonies, to apologize. Can you imagine? They want to apologize before things get worse. So this is a first. And I don't know whether they're going to agree to pay for reparations, but this is something that has never happened before. So I'm going to tell you why. Okay, hear this. Both England, King Charles III, and the German head of state, President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, visited East African countries recently, this week as a matter of fact, as part of their effort to strengthen their ties with the region and address their colonial past. So King Charles III visited Kenya on that 1st October, and he's going to leave, that is on Friday, the 3rd, and at the invitation of the Kenyan President William Ruto. This was his first state visit to a Commonwealth country as a king, and it coincided with Kenya's 60th anniversary of independence from Britain. One of the main highlights of the king's visit was his speech at a state banquet in Nairobi, where he expressed his greatest sorrow and the deepest regrets for the violence and atrocities committed by British colonial forces against Kenyans during the emergency that was 1952 to 1960. He also recognized abhorrent and unjustifiable acts of violence committed against the fighters of the Mau Mau rebellion who resisted the British colonial rule in Kenya. However, he did not offer a formal apology or reparations as some Kenyans had hoped for. As for the president, or the Germany president, President Steinmeier, he visited Tanzania from October 30th to November 1st. So he came this week and left yesterday, midweek, as part of his tour of Africa that also included Ghana and South Africa. He was welcomed by the Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu and other Tanzanian officials. The most significant moment of the president's visit was his apology for the colonial era killings in Tanzania over a century ago. He met with the descendants of Chief Songea Mbano, who was executed by German troops in 1906 for leading the Maji rebellion. This was probably the first armed struggle by Africans against Europeans. He asked for forgiveness for what Germans did to their ancestors and said he was ashamed of their cruel deed that left a mark on many generations. He also promised to work together with them to find Chief Songea's skull in Germany, where it may have been taken along with hundreds or thousands of other skulls from East Africa. And before I continue, you have to note that the Germans had this tendency of decapitating the heads of their perceived enemies in Africa and shipping these heads back, or these skulls back, to Germany. And I understand this comes out of their history and culture as barbarians in Europe. The Romans used to call them the barbarians when they would attack Roman soldiers and decapitate their heads and run away with them with the skulls. So they brought that barbaric act or practice to Africa, and it happened in 1905 in Namibia, where the German troops committed a genocide against the Nama people. They killed 65,000 innocent women and children and old people, and they carried some of their skulls back to Germany. So that's what he was talking about. Both visits show that the European leaders are trying to acknowledge and address their country's roles in the colonial history of Africa. The same year, earlier this year, the King of Belgium went to Congo to apologize. But one thing you have to note about the three of them is that they are not offering formal apology in a written form, and they are not willing to pay reparations to these countries. So the apology is not accepted. I know that in the hearts of most Africans, the apologies are not accepted. The other thing you need to note is that it seems the European countries are trying to salvage the situation. After what happened to France in West Africa, almost every former French colony doesn't want French influence in their country. So the other countries are trying to send their kings and their heads of state to come to Africa and try to mend this relationship. But the way they're doing it, without offering reparations and without offering formal apology, to me is a waste of time.